person. So what this platform is intended to do is to just help create positive conversations that help spark some change, some type of revolutionary ideas. I like a mentor who's down south used to always say, man, if I could be the one that had spoke to TD Jakes, or if I could be the one that had influenced President Obama, not to be the person that is on the front line, but to be the one that helps spark that change and revolution. And so today with us, we have a very, very, very special guest and a very special friend of mine personally. He is a life coach. He is a public speaker. He's just a wealth of knowledge, father, just all around good dude. And so I'm happy to have him here and to have this conversation with him. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my man, Mr. Ephraim Eaddy. How you doing, brother?
Man, doing good, bro. Happy to be here and excited too. I mean, that's honest.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. So we're going to just jump right into it. This is not a conversation of fluff. This is not the media. You know what I'm saying? This is not owned by any big corporation. So we can have honest conversation, say what needs to be said, and share with our people some real active plans of action. All right. So we're going to jump right into it. So I just want you to take a second, man, a few seconds, and introduce yourself, talk about what it is that you're doing. And let's start from there.
No, you got it, man. I'm first of all, I am Chicago born and raised. I like to always put that I'm the authentic version of Chicago.
Facts.
I'm a man that has a lot of optimism for the city, a lot of optimism for my people, a lot of optimism in humanity. But sometimes I'm a little discouraged by what I see. And I have been on an incredible journey personally. Mm-hmm. I think, sometimes, there are expectations put on us all, and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about this. And there's one thing to have expectations of others, then it's another thing to have expectations of yourself. Fact. And so I think I know I've moved from the expectations of others to the expectations that I have of myself. And that puts you in a different mindset for those who maybe have experienced both sides of it. And maybe for some, they only have expectations of themselves. They don't have necessarily the expectations of others to deal with. But for those who've had to deal with both, they'll understand what I'm saying. Put away the expectations of others and dealing with the expectation of myself. So I've been in therapy the past 2.5 years. I love to share that, love to say that. So that's been the most recent thing professionally. I've always given myself to things pertaining to the city of Chicago. And, I like to take the hard stuff. So I've done help develop grassroots organization and help with my father put together some programs on the west side of Chicago, did prison reform for 7 years, education for 6 years, and now police reform for the past 3 years. So that's keeping me busy, but I'm most excited about the therapy and personal journey and being a father, man. That's what I've been up to.
Yeah. And I think that's the key. And we're going to do things a little unorthodox, if you will.
You got it.
So the reason I wanted you to introduce yourself first, before I even had to introduce what this specific episode is all about, is because you did the perfect thing. You introduced what it is. And so this episode, we're talking about self-awareness. With this show, with this concept, there's 4 key areas that we're focusing on: self-awareness, economic development, law and policy, and family. And so today we're starting off with self-awareness, because before you can impact anything around you, anybody else around you, you have to have that going on within yourself. And so that's a beautiful thing. And so what I want to just start off with, you kind of started talking about expectations. And so one thing that I was just actually having a conversation with some people and doing research with this whole project is so often we'll put the blame on people and say, hey, man, you should know better. You should do better. But my revelation, if you will, my thoughts behind it, my point of view is if you don't have the information, if you don't know, then how can you ever know?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so it's like, you know, we have our people, for instance, if they're brought up in a hyper violent, hypersexualized society, how do I know that me going around sleeping with everything is not right, is not logical? You know what I'm saying? How do I know that, well, you know, getting money, quick money, or getting money period is in drugs or in violence? So how do I begin to find myself to change my expectations?
Well, I mean, I think, I can only speak personally. I mean, first of all, I've learned that often, I mean, we cannot dismiss what people are taught in the earliest stages of their lives. The way that love is introduced to us, right, wrong, dysfunctional, pure, by means of manipulation. I mean, we're all a product of those early things. And so it would be disingenuous for me to say that everybody just knows, because you're really in the early stages of your life. You're just getting passed on information.
Yeah, sure.
Hoping that the people that shared the information with you were accurate in what they shared. So, you know, some things, you know, you really only know because of hopefully somebody's giving you proper guidance that was rooted in fact or in faith.
Yeah.
You know, other than that, you really don't know until you experience, you know, some failures. Personally, there's a lot of, I can say I had a lot of I had a lot of information in life. I have a lot of information to go on, but yet I'm still finding failure. So just having information doesn't mean that you're gonna like end up in a certain path, because the experiences are gonna put pressure on that information, and then it's gonna put pressure on your instinctive kind of responses and stuff like that. So it really takes sometimes not only just being taught, but sometimes it's just gonna take failure, and it's gonna take going through. I can have a lot of thoughts about how much I think I can lift. I can have a lot of thoughts about how much money I think I can make, or what business I believe I can go into, but it's not until I actually do it, probably fail, that I really start to find out what is best suited for me, even with the information I have. Yeah. Maybe, and I'll just give this, I didn't know I was gonna go with this early. Okay. But I was on an architectural tour here in Chicago. And it was the one on the river, Chicago River. Okay. And they were showing all the buildings in terms of, and they were kind of giving history in terms of how they were made. And one of the buildings they gave they showed you, and they talked about how when you buy property, you also buy the airspace above the building, right? So not only do you have the land, but you have airspace up to a certain point. And then they showed a building that was built like hanging over the top of somebody else's property, right? So it like had its foundation, but then like this side over here was hanging on above somebody else's property, because they bought the airspace. And they told us to look at the top, and at the top, it looked like it was like a bridge like built on top, right? It looked really, really weird. And what they were helping us understand is that because the building didn't have a foundation on this side, because of the way it was hanging, the bridge on top, or what looked like a bridge, was pulling the side that didn't have a foundation underneath it on the side where the foundation was. And right there, I learned not everybody builds the same. The strength of some people may be at the lower level, whereas the strength of others may be at a higher level. And I think it goes exactly to the question that you asked. People's self-awareness comes through all kinds of ways, and you should not try to prescribe the way that your parents learned necessarily, or the way that your friends learned, to how it's going to be with you. You may build differently, but you all can have a building that stands on a firm foundation. So
that's really good. That's really good. And so you talked about having a firm foundation, and you also talked about going to therapy. So let's kind of jump in there, if you don't mind.
Yep, no, definitely.
Prompted you, because again, we come from, and again, this is honest conversations.
Yes.
And truthful. Us Black folks, it's been, you know, therapy has been around for a long time. within maybe, I would say, the last 2 to 3 years, it's been mainstream, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
But it was very much not talked about in our communities. It was very much not something that's normal. And if you went, you're crazy. And so
Mm-hmm.
that for the last 2.5 years, you went, and because I know
Uh-huh.
because it was the thing to do. And hey, maybe I got some issues. Let me just,
Mm-hmm.
that's not even your vibe. And then two, again, by you being a Black man, if I could say that, just from not generalizing everybody, but it's just not something that I'm going to go do by myself. Does that make sense? And so, with that being said, building a strong foundation, what was that thing that led you to therapy, and how has therapy helped you? Like, how has it really impacted you? Because obviously, first 2 sessions, somebody's watching this, they went to the first 2, 3 sessions, it was like, yo, what is this? Like, are you serious?
Mm-hmm.
But understanding that therapy is a long-term game. It's like a long-term investment. You have to go. You have to be consistent at it in order to see some results. And so, again, what prompted you to go,
Mm-hmm.
and what has kept you there, and all of that good stuff. Let's talk about that. Starting
So,
again, foundation.
so really, it's I mean, there's nothing like not only failure
Mm-hmm.
that, in my opinion, personal failure that should prompt you,
Okay.
that can prompt a person, and that prompted me. But it was kind of a readjusting of my thinking.
Okay.
You know, sometimes when you think that everything that you've done, been taught, or maybe were exposed to is like the right way, then things start unraveling. Sometimes you need to go talk to somebody about it. And for me, it was a failed marriage. I'm the only one here, so I can only talk about myself. I failed at marriage. And so, and through that failure, and this is why and I don't think people, and I hope you're this way, but people shouldn't come on your show unless they're prepared to tell the whole truth.
Facts. Facts.
Because if you're not prepared to talk about it, then I'm no different than a performer, right?
Facts.
But I found myself literally starting to lose grasp of reality. And if anyone has ever had to be in numerous roles, you never really know how much you're taking on the identity of the role, and maybe losing the identity of your true self.
Mm.
So if I'm the identity of a community activist, if I'm the identity of a role model, if I'm the identity of a husband, if I have the identity of a father, if I have the identity of a man of faith, if I have the identity of Ephraim, if I have right, so you have all these identities, which like, how can you put on all these hats and still remain true to the core of who you are? And so for me, it was the struggle of being all these roles and fulfilling all of these expectations and fulfilling all of these requirements, and totally losing sight of who Ephraim was. Now, I enjoyed those things, but if I'm being honest, Ephraim grew tired at times. Ephraim wasn't always a reflection of what that smile said. Ephraim was fighting for a self-expression. Ephraim was fighting for places where he could disclose the truth in a way that may not be appealing to those who may be looking on me. And because I didn't have that, and because I kept a lot of it to myself, I found myself becoming more of these characters instead of just being the true Ephraim, regardless of the roles. And so I equate it to any actor, and I've shared this before. There are some actors who, the shooting of a movie, they never break character. They're the character on the screen, and then when they go home, they stay in character during the entire shoot. Well, if you do that too long, you can start to believe that you really are only that character. It's like, no, wait, now you Ali on the screen. You're not really Ali, And so for me, it was stripping away of all of those roles, stripping away of all of those expectations, and just saying, I'm going to be purely Ephraim. And if purely Ephraim fulfills those roles, fine. But if they don't, I'm good too. And unfortunately, my failed marriage moved me into the reflection of that. And it opened up the greatest kind of discovery of my life next to my faith, and that was therapy.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. That's what I mean. We in the house now, man. So
Yeah.
let's deal with that, all right? Because you hit on two things that I kind of I'm gonna just throw it out there, and I want you just to pick it up, all right? So you talked about admitting. So again, dealing with us and the way that we are, not only just as men, but then Black men. My pride, my ego. I'm already thrown out there again by police. I'm already thrown out there by expectations of relationships. I'm already thrown out there by expectations of careers and financial success. And so for me to admit that I have a failure, or let's not even just say a failure, to admit that I have some type of situation here that is not positive. How about that? We can word it like that. To admit that now causes me to look in the mirror, as you just talked about. And so we're going to talk about admitting, but then how knowing that admitting introduces you to defining knowledge of self. And so maybe it's vice versa for you. Maybe it's one and the same, but I just want you just to kind of deal with that, because again, you admitted to it. You had to know that, okay, there's an issue here, because sometimes we don't want to admit because we're comfortable where we are. I mean, think about it. If I'm used to doing something for 20 years, I mean, for you just to come and tell me that I'm wrong, or, you know, that this is something off, I'm not really down for that type of conversation. But then, you know, I know that once I admit, I can start to heal. And once I heal, now I know who I am. So now I'm just not letting any and everything happen around me. And so let's deal with that, if you don't mind.
So no, I think you know, it does start with a healthy view of yourself, meaning I should say, an honest view of yourself. And it's if anybody that's owned a car, you know, man, if 3 of those tires are working and that one, is that rubber is starting to burn down a little bit, you like the other 3 are working, so I'm still good. And I think the sometimes what we do, although we admit, we still focus on like, but everything else is working. Mm-hmm. And we don't know often how it's bleeding into all the other areas of our lives. So with me, it started with, admitting that I was losing it, admitting that I was starting to have some like real strong like feelings and aggression and anger, and like all of these things are coming, and I'm feeling them coming very strong, that I really started to realize like this isn't a reflection of who I am, but something's feeding into this, and I got to find out. And one of the things that I learned, it wasn't just my marriage. My marriage kind of brought some things to the forefront, but there were issues that preceded my marriage. It had nothing to do with, my ex-wife. It had nothing to do with, it was just those things kind of manifested during those times, but there were issues in other places. So it does really start with admitting it, but then you got to be willing to do something about it. And when you don't have people who are around you that's ever, in this case, been to therapy and things of that nature, it can be pretty scary, because you know that you're about to go, first of all, you're about to go talk to a stranger, but two, you're about to go in the room and talk about yourself. And therapy isn't about, at least from what I've learned, it's not really about me going in there talking about what everybody else has done. It's really talking about how things are affecting me, and getting down to the root cause of that, and then being honest about, like, people don't like to admit, the bad thoughts that they have, strange thoughts that they have. Yeah. You gotta be comfortable with saying, I'm not saying this is me.
Yeah.
I saw that old lady crossing the street and I thought about pushing her down. Like, you got to be honest and say if that's your thought. Like, but now we got to understand, why do you have that thought? Why are you having those kind of feelings? Maybe that's tied to something else. Maybe it was an old lady that used to pinch you in church. Maybe it was like, you don't know. So it is really about getting to that core. And then if you really are a person that you want to live authentically and you want to be vulnerable, we don't hear that a lot of times with men. living vulnerable. I believe, it's gonna sound whatever, but you're really supposed to live naked, meaning you're not supposed to be covering up your bad spots and covering up your, like, no, let it show, because then we can deal with what's there. Yeah. And maybe we can be a little bit more accepting of who we really are, even if it's maybe not accepted by a group of people, maybe who haven't even known us for what they thought was all of our lives. So.
Indeed, that's really good. So how do you define knowledge of self?
So for me, it's at what point, so knowledge of self for me is the point that you are truly sold on the person you are without anyone's outside influence or opinion, right? So, okay. You know, knowledge of self is, in my opinion, like you being your true authentic self, knowing that it may not be accepted. Your true and authentic self, even though it's probably going to reveal some unpleasant parts of you, you know. I mean, man, as much as I like pedestals, I hate them at the same time. Like, so I like being raised up as a person who maybe has done some things, but I don't like it at the same time, because I'm like, you know, I don't like the expectations of people, but I like the praise of people. Now that might not sound too good to people who may hear it, but if that's honest, then that's being part of your true self. Like saying that, hey, sometimes I am trying to appease people. Well, hey, that's okay, but now we want to talk about to what degree are you willing to do it, you know? And so it's admitting all the good and the bad parts of you that may be bad to other people, but just saying, this is who I am. This is how I've learned to operate. And I'm working through managing that good and that perceived bad of myself in order to be like the best human being possible. So, you know, man, I would love to say I'm all good. There's some other parts that's working, and I'm managing those too.
And if anybody is saying that they're all good, they're not being honest with themselves.
Right. They haven't reached knowledge of self yet. If they, hey, if it's one thing that I say to people now, when you know, I don't even know if they even ask. I tell people I'm complicated. Like I'm complicated. I'm good, but I'm complicated. Yeah. I could be a little dismissive sometimes, but I'm all right. You know, all right. I'm all right. Like over the long course of things, you know. And that to me, that's what it is. And then because it's not just, I don't think knowledge of self is just what you say about yourself. I believe that is affirmation. I think that is, you know, knowledge of self is not only who you desire to be, but who you are in the moment, and taking into account all the parts, even the bad.
Indeed. And that's a great segue. So being in the moment, one thing that I noticed that helped me was also therapy, but then also meditation. So let's talk about that a little bit. I don't know if you meditate, and if you do, what kind of meditation do you do? I mean, it's really good that we do that. For me, I'll start off. For me, I'm a big proponent on how you start the day is how the day is going to be. You have control over everything. Not necessarily situations that's going to be presented to you, but you do control how you react to those situations. And so if you don't get a handle on it early in the day, when it comes to you, you'll react in a way and then look back at it and be like, man, there was another way I could have handled that. And so let's deal with that. So first, meditation. Do you meditate? And if so, how does your meditation look?
So I'll say this, man, for a long time, I was heavy on meditation. And let me just say, first and foremost, I think a lot of our actions as they kind of occur throughout not only a day, but our lives, based on like, what are we meditating on? Whether it's intentionally or unintentionally. So the intentional meditation, man, is really going to help direct your like movements, whether you know it or not. You know, meditation is like the steering wheel to a certain degree. It's like putting something on autopilot for a particular destination. If you meditate on it, your behavior, your actions are really going to follow suit. And the best way of me kind of giving that example is really a dream. A dream is a subconscious sleep meditation, right? And when a person is in a dream, right, their body is reacting to what is the focus and intent of the mind at that time. It's a dream. And so the body's gonna jerk, the body's gonna react, the body's gonna sweat, often based on what's going on in the mind. And so if it can work in that way in our sleep through, some image that's in the mind, then it definitely can work when we're awake and we're consciously meditating. Our actions, our body is gonna have the energy that's needed. And I believe we're gonna be much more aggressive about things if we meditate. But one of the things that I've changed is I used to meditate a lot on the future. Now I meditate much more on the present. And I think living in the future too much can be a challenge because you may not be taking into account the things that are occurring right in front of you. And so for me, I think I was so focused on future meditation that I was missing a lot of things that were happening in real time. And so often I am doing more meditation about the day's priority with sight on what is my future destination. And so I'm doing much more of that. And the thing that it also allows me to do, honestly, I didn't do it as much before, it allows me to celebrate more now.
That's good.
There wasn't a lot of celebrations for me before, which may have contributed to maybe some demise, personally. I wasn't taking the time to really celebrate the small things. It was like grind for the next. But that can get a little unhealthy. And so that's one of the major changes that I've made. I definitely do meditate on the present a lot more than the future, because I have the future in mind, and that's not going anywhere.
Indeed. And I think that was a beautiful point that you just made, because that was actually the next point on the list, was appreciation. So far we've talked about therapy, counseling, we've talked about meditation and appreciation. Sometimes we get caught up in what we don't have, that it affects, like you just said, it affects everything around us. Sometimes, I understand that money answers all things. I understand that we have bills and we have things, but if you could find a way to get yourself at a peaceful place, the answer will come to you on how to get what you need. But sometimes we'll get so caught up in what we don't have that we don't even appreciate that. Man, I have the ability to think for myself. Matter of fact, I am a creative being. And, I am naturally a producer. And so if you can, just real quick, 30 seconds, let's, just dig into the point of appreciation, because you had already went there. But if you dig into that a little bit.
So I'll say this, and it's one of the things that I do, and I just did it this past weekend, I'm often setting up things at the end of the week that's kind of like my reward for all the work that I did prior. Like if I didn't do anything that week, then I'm in the house. But if I know I really, moved some things, advanced in some of my goals, advanced in some of the things pertaining to whether it's work or personal, that could be just taking care of your body or whatever, then I'm going to reward myself towards the end of the week. And then the other thing is, I was always a person that I'm I'm a natural loner, but I've learned to, for me, celebrate more with people who are also doing things, be willing to share, and whether that's social media or just sharing with friends, because it's almost rewarding for you to be able to talk about your progress and not trying to hold it in. And I know there's a lot of sentiments out there that say, don't share what you're doing with other people and people are going to hate on you. Well, the truth of the matter is, people aren't really thinking about us as much as we let on. Like everybody's they're really dealing with their own stuff. I mean, I know we all want to think we're that important, but man, be willing to share, what you're doing with some folks. And if you are a person that you're more of an outgoing person, I think you should take some time to just celebrate just you. Just go to a place where it's just you and celebrate yourself and your own accomplishments. And I think we should do more of that whether it's weekly, monthly, bi-weekly, or whatever, because this life it can be difficult. There's a lot of things to enjoy, but I will say, if you're waiting on other people to appreciate you, or you're waiting to finally get there to have some form of appreciation, you can start to run on fumes. So you have to learn to appreciate yourself, and it doesn't have to be indulging in things that's gonna rob your bank account, but finding little things that like, man, this is for me, for the work that I've been doing, and I wanna appreciate myself for these small accomplishments.
That's what's up.